Welcome to Readiness and Adoption meeting number 30. So very exciting to see these numbers keep going and going. I remember when it was a 1. So we've come a long way since then. Let's see, what is our agenda today? All right, so we're going to do a little follow-up on our June 17th speakers that we had, talk about what's coming up, our next speaker series installment, and then walk through some project updates, see what's happening in our one-on-one support. And if there's time, we'll go over some ongoing action items and team breakouts at the end. So just a quick catch up. So we had Nell Escher from UC Berkeley and Ben Green from University of Michigan last meeting talking about 2 recent articles that are listed here: algorithm auditing policies and flawed assumptions about public sector systems, and codifying the law, how disciplinary divides afflict the development of legal software. There was lots of great content there. Those 2 presenters came with a lot of information. I wasn't able to be here during that meeting, but I caught up on the recording and I was really impressed with both the information that they went over and the engagement and the conversation that happened afterwards. So we always like to create some space in the next meeting to talk about any of the reflections that people have had about those meetings, the speakers, and the concepts that were discussed there. Have you done anything with those concepts? Did it spur you to think about anything that you're doing in terms of implementing AI at your agency, or thinking through that thought process? So wanted to open the floor a little bit to see if anybody had any reflections from that meeting and those speakers. So, and you can say something in the chat, or you can raise your hand and comment out loud. I don't know if everybody was here. I know we've got some new members here, and we'll point you to the recordings for that. So if you're new, you can catch up on those. And that will be in the post-meeting follow-up, but we can hopefully get that in the chat as well. But there's a YouTube channel where all of our past committee meetings, all the other committee meetings are hosted ongoing. So you can always use that space to catch up on everything that's happening. I'm not seeing any hands raised or any comments for speaker series. Oh, there's Albert's comment. Appreciate how auditing in part relies on transparency built into purchasing contracts. Yeah, I was struck by that too, Albert. I thought the whole Midas discussion about like the issues that they were having with that software, and that even to this day they're still not able to get any information from the vendor side about the setup of that tool, like really spoke to me about the importance of making sure your contract is sound, and that there's the needs of the public agency are being met through that contracting relationship. So I thought that was really interesting. So that was that whole Midas. I've read about the Midas example in the past, and for those of you that weren't there, the Midas is a system that was built to help the agency allocate benefits, but also assess for benefit fraud. And it was incorrectly IDing fraud in lots of areas, and also the back end system wasn't set up properly, and so they've had it's a lot that they've had to untangle. And so this paper that they were researching really dove into like what was going on in that system, like what was causing the problem, what agencies might want to do to shore up their contracts with these types of entities so that they're protected if something goes wrong. And thank you, Sean, for sharing the playlist there in the chat. Really appreciate that. But looks like we don't have any other additional comments. We'll move on to talking about what's coming next. So we've got those of you who read the newsletter and participated in the coalition-wide meeting know that we the GovAI Coalition referenced this Greening AI in the Public Sector handbook that Hannah Lipstein had developed. She's worked with Data and Society and the GovAI Coalition to create this handbook and this resource for people about how to green AI in public sector and how procurement can help you do that. So we're building on that awareness in the coalition-wide meeting to have her come and speak to this committee directly about this handbook and talk about some of the concepts from that, how you could start thinking about applying this with your own procurement processes. Yes, thank you, Albert, for sharing that article. And so we'll be having her come and talk about the concepts from this. And I don't know if Meg's on the call, but Meg has been really instrumental in getting these public speakers for us lately, and just wanted to give her a shout out for all of her help getting such great speakers coming in, talking about really relevant topics. I think this one's going to be a really great one too. So really looking forward to hearing from Hannah in our meeting, which is on the 15th, I believe. Yeah, the 15th. So mark your calendars. We'd love to see you show up if you have the ability. And, you know, I do want to also mention, you know, when we have these guest speakers come in, and really the idea is for them to give us things to think about when we go through the readiness and adoption process of AI and thinking about how to do that. But we really want them to be as engaging as possible too. So we're really structuring these so there's like some upfront presentation, but, you know, really encourage you to ask questions and really think about how you might apply some of the concepts that are coming up in this. You know, really want to encourage you having some conversation with the speakers after those presentations and thinking about how they can impact your own agency's journeys around AI. So just really want to encourage that in these sessions. They're not just meant to be somebody presenting information to you, but this is a space for us to sort of collaborate and think about the impact of some of the concepts that are being presented. So really want to encourage that ongoing. But looking forward to Hannah coming at the next meeting. Thank you, Albert. I was just going to ask, could we share the link to that article? And he's 2 steps ahead of me all the time, so appreciate that. Let's see. So we have a couple of project updates, and we're kicking off with the fire working group. And Jim, I am going to turn the floor over to you so that you can walk us through this update.
Thanks, Rich. So yeah, it's been a couple of months since I've been able to get on. I've actually got a local Hawaii group that meets at the same time each month. So I've been trying to split time between the two. But our fire working group is going well. Slow progress, but slow and steady, adding a couple members a month, it looks like, up to about 35 members. And we normally have an engaged group of between 10 and 15 at each meeting. So over the past couple months, we always try to include some type of use case in our meeting. So the past couple of months, we've had a couple of demonstrations. And one of the things that the fire service has been engaging with is a change in our incident reporting system. So when we changed from the old system, January 1, we changed to a new system where the data elements are similar, but they're different. So part of what we're trying to do is create this translation so we can look at year-over-year data instead of looking at incident report data as apples to oranges between the two different systems. We're trying to get them from green apples to red apples, right? At least so they're close. So one of the things we did is one of the folks I teach with back at the National Fire Academy is an Excel wizard. And he demonstrated a tool, an Excel tool that we could use to translate from the old system to the new system. So looking at the different ways that we can look at both bidirectional, looking at the data. And then the AI component of that was really interesting is we've been trying to solve an issue doing fractal response times in pivot tables, which is sounds easy, but is absolutely not easy to do. And my buddy, the wizard, was able to use Copilot to to actually figure out the formulas. So in this Excel tool, we've actually been able to have it automatically calculate fractal response time and pivot tables. So that was a pretty huge thing, something we've been working on for probably 5 years, and just hadn't come across the right configuration.
Hey,
In
Jim,
addition to that,
really quickly,
yeah.
can you explain a little bit about those times you're talking about and what those are?
So in the fire service, we have some standards where we are supposed to respond to any given incident in X amount of time. And there's a couple different ways to measure the starting point, whether it's when the 911 call is received or whether when we receive the call at the station. But essentially, we're trying to measure the fractal response time being the 90th response time is our goal. And then it's either between 4.5 and 6 minutes, depending on where you measure from.
Okay.
So, and then there's some slightly different variations depending on whether it's a fire or an EMS or a non-emergency call. So there's, and these are national standards that we try to meet. And in order to determine whether or not we're meeting them, we got to figure out how to measure them and compare them. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal for us.
Great.
So looking at translation tools, second part of that was in order to do sort of a bulk translation of the old coding system into the new coding system. We actually built out a tool using OpenAI's Codex that I literally can just drop a spreadsheet, a CSV or an XLS file into, and it spits out the translation for the incident type. So we can at least, again, we're not going to get to apples, but we're red apples to green apples now for that. So talking to our group and demonstrating how some of these tools can be used to do these types of translations, and they can be built. I mean, I have no coding experience. I have some background in the data, so I understood what my data was, which is imperative when you're building out a tool like this. But again, I have no coding experience, and we're able to make it work and verify it. And then the last meeting, we had a really interesting group from Hawaii Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. And I have to read that because it's a long name. But in Hawaii, we have the interesting, it's interesting that we just have ongoing disasters and that we have an active volcano here. And very seldom does it actually pose any real danger. But when it does, being able to have curated and vetted social media information that's first person information is really a game changer for the EOC and the disaster managers. So what this group did is they actually created a social media network. This was back in 2018 from the eruption back then, and figured out how to game the algorithm in Facebook. It's a Facebook-based group, so that it's turtles and sunsets until there's a disaster, and then when the disaster happens, they're able to actually post a lot of stuff that normally Facebook would flag as inappropriate content. So then they use that information and an AI algorithm to actually aggregate the information and feed it back to the EOC. So really interesting system. It's repeatable, great group of guys. So it was nice to meet them and have them come talk about how they're using AI and social media to crowdsource disaster information. So that was last month. Next month, we're looking for an update from Honolulu Fire Department. I did a kind of an introductory class for them, let's say last October. And since then, they've been building out their AI team and making progress. And they're going to come talk about kind of the path that they followed and their progress and what they're seeing as the benefits to their fire department. That'll be at the July 8th meeting. So I've just reached out to fire engineering training. Last thing, that lesson 5 on AI note takers, I think is supposed to go live in July. So that would be now. So we should have those first 5 lessons actually live in fire engineering training. Again, free for anybody to take those classes. And then working on lesson 6 on risk management now. So lots going on, super active, good group helping me out there. So really appreciate the opportunity to work with these folks.
Great. And sorry. Oh, I'm hearing myself. Oh, sorry about that. There's an echo. I thought I was interrupting somebody, but it was just myself. Um, so Jim, is there a link to the landing page for the fire course that you could drop in the chat?
Yeah, I can grab that real quick.
Great. Also, I was just really like interested in your Excel and OpenAI Codex examples. I think those are really great, like potential use cases to think about in terms of, because I know a lot of people work with a lot of complex Excel data. Um, and those are, I think those are really interesting case studies that we should maybe think about if they have some applicability to other areas. So.
Yeah, it's what's nice is AI lets you solve problems. I'll speak for myself personally. It lets me solve problems I might not otherwise have the knowledge to do. So then solving the problem and then verifying that the output is correct is really the challenge because anybody can build anything today, but is it right?
Right.
So it still requires that verification.
Yeah, and it sounds like it was really helpful to have the Excel guru to be looking at things as well, right?
Oh
So,
yeah.
so that's always helpful, right?
Yeah, and this is Sahir. I just wanted to add that Jim is an excellent resource helping us out with City of Detroit as well. And I'll tell you about the five lessons. They are really useful and helpful with and if folks can join Jim's meetings, they also, one of the meetings they demonstrated where he says from the old system to the new system, I believe like and first to nearest or something like that, right, Jim? And that was so enlightening when I saw practically how they were using some of the data to convert and show and all that. So that's very useful if you can spread the word about all the work they are doing for the fire departments. If you guys can also communicate within your organizations, we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sahir.
Great, thanks. And Jim, are you looking for additional members, or you want people if they have interest?
We're 100% open. My philosophy is I am just the facilitator, and it's really about us being able to share with each other. So the more folks we get involved who are willing to share their lessons learned, that's what's going to make the group valuable.
Great. And do they have to be fire professionals to join?
No, I'm happy to have all perspectives because one of the things we talk about is stakeholder engagement. So anybody who's a stakeholder is welcome to come listen, and I got nothing to hide. So
Yeah. All right. Well, if anybody in the meeting has an interest in the fire activity, or you have a fire department in your agency or that you work with and want to get involved in this space, Jim has created so many excellent resources and is a great place. That working group that he has around fire is a great place to, test some of the training classes and have an input in what's happening with fire and AI. So encourage people to get engaged in that space if you can. So let's see, our other project update today is, oh, I'm sorry, I left AI fire there, but this is actually AI and training. So sorry I didn't get that fixed on the slide. Rick, you're up with this update, I believe.
Yeah, sure.
Welcome.
That sounds good. Okay. Yeah, so I am representing us. Lana is on a trip to Asia. But our latest thing is that Albert in recent meetings has been suggesting that people start applying for or submitting presentations for the December summit. So we put together a couple of them within the group. One of them, so these are just submissions. Albert said that it's highly competitive. Lots of people have been putting things in there. But one of them is essentially around what we were talking about for leadership a while back when we were actually thinking about putting a leadership training together, and we decided that wasn't necessarily exactly the right target, but building actual champions that can exemplify it is highly desired. And I think even Jim was mentioning that when we were having the discussion about leadership. So that's Molly Vogt from Portland is taking the lead on that, and she's inviting some other people into the process if it gets accepted. And then Lon and Dr. Rapini put together a submission on basically the certification process that we're looking to do. And I think now that we're at this moment right now where the consortium, the GovAI Coalition is as it's moving into private or a nonprofit status, then it has more opportunities to have funding for certain things, and certification does cost some money. And so this is kind of an overall picture of what we're looking to do as the initial certification process. So hopefully by December, it'll be, the goal is that at that point in time, people will be able to sign up and to go through the curriculum for that and get that certification. So that's the ambition there. Um, we also just as I get tired of talking about playbooks because we still have the same playbooks from last year, but they keep getting improved in various ways. And one of them was that we needed to meet the accessibility requirements. And so now there is a nice clean playbooks folder with exactly the three playbooks and exactly the three visual one-pagers that summarize those playbooks, and the link is here. Rich, if you want to throw that in the chat, that would be great because I think a lot of people don't know where to find these things, and just as a reminder, they are on Getting Started with Your Agency. There's a curriculum that Jeffco had rolled out that like 50 people at a time have been going through, and has been yielding really good results in their area and our agency. And then there's one on custom GPTs and agentic AI that's been essentially the playbook that a lot of people have been learning on some of the projects I'll be getting to in a second. So that's the update on that. So in the spirit of what Rich was saying earlier about speakers, this was a speaker at the coalition meeting as opposed to the Readiness and Adoption meeting. But Melanie McDonough gave a great talk at the last coalition meeting at the end of May, or I guess the one maybe it was a little more than the last one. But she gave a demo, and I can share a link to that. I meant to put that on the slide, and I'll go ahead and throw that in there. And it's like 30 minutes within that meeting, but it starts at like the 10-minute mark. And that was great. I mean, that talked about all the use cases. It talked about what she'd built out. But what I really wanted to do was make sure that um, that we learned from her process, because most of what she was talking about was what she had built in terms of use cases, and the how, I think, is what the training group is especially interested in, and being able to replicate that. And she was great. She in our little working group meeting, she discussed that, and she's talking about maybe making a workbook or playbook to get started, to help people get started if they want to do this. And I'm always, as a technologist and as a participant in these kinds of forums, I'm very interested in not reinventing wheels and spreading the love. And that's one of the things I think has been really great about being in the GovAI Coalition. And she seemed like she already wanted to do this herself, and so it's not actually any extra work on her part. And I think so once that comes together, we'll figure out how to get that out into the mix of people and get some eyes on it. And hopefully it'll become another one of our resources. So I think it's since the last meeting, Lon's nonprofit, Cyber Trust America, has been running an internship program, and she's been able to get funding. And Albert gave her a really good task, which is try to describe the skill sets that these interns have so that we can map those onto projects that might be suitable. And that's still, she's had to go on her trip, and I don't think she's managed to get that out yet. But I did want to give people a heads up, because I think it's one of the more exciting things that's going on. Is it's a win-win-win. The interns learn, they get some experience, they can get them work done. Um, we the we Her nonprofit, gets more, wins as stories of successes for the interns that they're supporting. And then, of course, the agencies can get free work done if they can figure out the right projects for this. And really, this is one of the best ways that people can get hands-on learning doing real projects that somebody cares about is really the best way for people to learn AI. And I think by working with interns, one thing I've noticed in the time I've been working with the GovAI Coalition is that everyone's super busy. And, a lot of times we're dealing with the one person in an agency that's kind of responsible for AI there. And so having people that can just be in an implementation mode on a well structured project that's not necessarily critical path, but is the right ask for a set of interns. Lana's been really happy to bring mentors together that are supporting those outside of the agency, and it's just something I want to make sure has visibility. Other than that, it looks like everybody's celebrating the holiday on Friday, so we're still clear for having our meeting on Monday. I don't have a topic for that, although Albert had shared a very interesting thing Albert, can you just speak really quickly? I think everybody might be interested in, and I'm thinking about inviting them into our process. There's a group that called the Gov Lab, and then there was a discussion of Innovate US, which has created a bunch of really compelling training modules that people are using. And they're putting out a new self-paced course that's free called Designing Democratic Engagement with AI Practical Strategies for Public Participation. And it seems to be a lot about, if an agency is actually doing things with AI, how they socialize that and engage the public in that endeavor. Albert, do you want to say anything about that? I know I was thinking about waiting till the next meeting to even bring it up, but I just thought since you're right here,
Yeah,
it's interesting. Yeah.
appreciate it, Rick, and apologies for the background noise. Long story short, I'm in a cafe. But the Innovate US, if you have not heard of them, I highly recommend you take a look at them. Innovate US, awesome organization. They've been putting out really solid trainings on AI and public sector for a couple of years now. They're all for free for government folks. Uh, awesome resource. We are really excited that over the next couple of months, we're going to be partnering with them on a couple of trainings. Thanks to Rich and Sayer, and I don't know if Alice is on the call, but Alice and other folks being able to put together some trainings from engagement to policy to governance to use cases. So I'm really excited for what's going to be coming out of that. That will actually be live webinars, which you can correct me, but I believe it's in November. So
November, yeah, the first
yeah,
3 weeks of November, yeah.
yeah. And so we'll be in the process of putting together some stuff around that. We'll get more information out to you all as we're coming closer to that. And we're working with them on some well, called asynchronous trainings that folks can take a look at. It should be coming out sometime in July, if not. Uh, so excited to see where that goes. There'll be more news to come. But just excited to really get the partnership with Innovate. Uh,
Yeah, so I mean, Innovate US has been coming up as a common theme ever since we inherited the list of trainings that the Education Committee had put together, and definitely a few people have had testimonials in our working group meetings about their work, and it's always been positive. I mean, they seem to be very well contained, well designed, and well distributed. So. Yeah, so just tell me the GovLab and the people you're dealing with relative to Innovate US, are they two different entities and they just happen to be advocating for that, or are they two related? That's a
two
question for
apps of
you.
this, yeah, Rick, two apps of the same coin, and we're talking with GovLab on some broader things as well. Uh, but Innovate, my understanding, and I want to I'll pull up their org chart shortly, but they're effectively one and the same. I don't want to say anything that's too off on their work structure before I get that nailed down. So let me check my email and I'll get back to you in like 5 seconds.
Okay. Okay, and really it's mostly a matter of just understanding, we'd like to be a clearinghouse for materials like this and but we don't need to be involved if you guys create things and just put them out in the same folders or whatever. But just let us know if there's very specific things you'd like us to do beyond just socializing it within our group, if that's helpful. Okay, and then just the last thing is that we still have the Slack channel. I've realized that so our next meeting is July 6th, and then we have the Slack channel where I would love to have more conversation going. I just realized that a lot of government people have other worlds, and Slack is kind of a small part of their world. But the postings that are there tend to be really high quality, and anybody who actually has interesting things to say, we welcome them there. And then I will go ahead and post um, Melanie's presentation from the link to that in the chat. Thanks. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Rick. And just to circle back to Innovate, we've been trying to work with them for quite some time, and it's been a little bit of a long arc. But one of the things they do a couple of things. They do, like Albert said, it's already pre-built and you walk through the course. It's like asynchronous, like he was talking about. So they have some courses that you can take to get familiar around some of the basic concepts of AI. And they're very foundational. So it's a good starting point for people, the trainings that they built, and you can actually, you can participate in stages when you have time, and it builds up to actually getting a certificate for some of those courses. And then the other thing they do is the webinars where they bring together like experts and people who have knowledge and get them in a meeting like we're in right now. It's a live meeting where they present some information, and then there's a really robust Q&A afterwards. So they have two sort of streams of approach to educating people, and they're both really helpful. I've participated. I've taken one of their certificate, their sort of basic training workshops and gotten a certificate out of that. And then I've also participated in their live webinar sessions. So they're both really equally helpful paths there. So I'm really excited about working with them and in both capacities. So very excited to see how that all develops. And let's see. Albert, I was going to ask you really quickly, are submissions still open for potential summit discussions, or has the deadline passed for that?
So technically, the deadline has not passed. The deadline is when we publish the agenda, which you can expect to see that in July. What's going to be happening, just to kind of peel back the curtain a bit. We had our content meeting, which is like this big inaugural meeting for defining what we generally want to see. So that's why I wanted to make sure that folks got their submissions in then, because it's the easiest time to talk through it with our team. What's going to happen in the next couple of weeks? We're defining generally what the sessions are going to look like, and then decide who we're going to ask to be a part of those sessions and how they all yeah. So if you submit a session idea right now, what'll likely happen, I wouldn't expect it to be like, oh, we're going to absolutely have a session like name is that, description is exactly what you presented, but more so, oh, this person wants to talk about this. Let's see if we can bring them in as a part of this other session that's happening.
Yeah, got it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I just knew that there was a submission deadline at one point. I want people to know about it and know if there's other ways they can participate. So great. Thank you. And let's see. So wanted to create some space. Oh, sorry, Albert, go ahead.
Real quick, just Rick, to answer your question, I put it in the chat, but Innovate US is a project across GovLab and a few other partners. GovLab has a broader direction, so you can kind of think of it as GovLab and a few others here. Innovate US is a project.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you, Albert.
Great, thank you. So wanted to give some space to our one-on-one support sessions. We have 3 categories of one-on-one support: community engagement, data governance, and policy support. and wanted to see if Sahar or Liz or any of the one-on-one support representatives want to check in about how those are going or anything that's happening in that space.
Thanks, Rich. I don't know if Bag or Liz, anybody is there, but we do get requests for general guidance on policy support, and people are also Alex is aware of that. People have also shared their policy to see if what our take is, and things like that. Um, the templates and examples are on the GovAI website, coalition website. You can get all the information, templates, and examples there. And if you're still stuck, not just the policy document, but the whole process of, I know we are in very much advanced phase, but if there are people who are still trying to establish some of the governance or policy, or establish a work group or committee or things like that, or have a governance mechanism in their organization with respect to AI, you can always reach out to us, and we can provide. When we help you, we learn stuff too, and from your questions, we learn how to navigate and address some of the concerns commonly people have, and things like that. So there's this intake form that Rich is showing on the slide that helps you book a time with any of the three major areas listed here, and we can go from there. So if anybody has any questions, let us know.
And I can chime in for the community engagement one-on-one. Just like for policy, if anything from you're just thinking about possible ideas on how to talk to the public about how you're using AI, to you have an engagement plan that you would like feedback on, to even thinking about, I'm not sure if I can convince my city leadership to support these engagement efforts. We're just here to talk things through and share stories from what we've heard, successes from other agencies.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Sahar, are you getting something across all of these channels now, or?
It has, Richard has slowed down a bit. We are getting some. I think Liz and Meg got some for community engagement. We had for data governance. And I do certainly have the intake from this policy support, or individual emails as well. But yeah, to your question, we are getting all across, but it has definitely, I feel it's slowed down a bit. So if you guys want to book your time or anything, or reach out, please feel free. Does it answer your question, Rich?
Yes.
I'll just say, this is both a heads up for Sarah, Liz, and the team, and also for those that are thinking about signing up. Likely starting next month, the registration email that we send out to everyone that just joins the coalition, it's going to include those one-on-one signups links. So just for context, we get about 100 registrations a month. And so it would not surprise me if more bookings start to happen starting in, say, August. So if you want to sign up before we start, publicizing it more to everyone as they just join, now's a good time to take a look at that.
That's great. That's going to be great promotion for that. Be really helpful. Those are also the link to the intake form, and that program is also in the newsletter, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you follow up on the newsletter, you can always access it there. I'll also include a link to that in the post-meeting follow-up for those of you that are new. I see a conversation happening in the chat around that Jason has mentioned. Albert, you were thinking about the idea that he was presenting. I don't know if Jason, if you want to talk about that at all, or if he's still on the call.
I'm here. I'm trying to fiddle with my camera. Hi, everybody.
Okay.
Which topic was it? I was just like vomiting all over the chat. I tend to do that. Smart cities is
That was the custom graph model across the data set of city and state regulations, right? Is that the one, Albert? Yes.
oh, I was just wondering if anybody in the coalition had done that. I know you've been at it for a few years, and I'm not really familiar with your use case set, but I've been working with a lot of our big aerospace companies on use cases. And when it comes to, the things that could be done with large unstructured data sets and the things that have been done when it comes especially to semantic modeling and custom graph models and how well they're able to predict how language might impact financial models, planning models, and other models downstream. Because a lot of that you should be fairly successful at, especially with some of the newer technologies like SAP's built RPT 1.5. It's a tabular planning model based on financial data from over 30,000 customers. Adding that to a lot of the other things that you know about in semantic graphs and in-memory capabilities allows you to do some rather novel things. And I would just love to see kind of what the performance other people have done, correlating, the language of political policy to financial models, zoning, stuff like that. Those are kind of some of the things that fascinate me, kind of tying into smart cities and cost allocation and predictions and agents on the ground, stuff like that. Nice to meet you.
Rick, I see you commented on that. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Sure. Yeah. So, Jason, now that you described that in a little more detail, I mean, it's getting into some pretty advanced use cases, and I would say that, like, what was really cool in what I mentioned in the chat was that Stephen Hill and his team put together this service desk and some other services rooted in just getting a repository of all their documents. So I originally keyed in on your point about figuring out where things are conflicting or the documents are overlapping or whatever. But they built a lot of stuff out with Scout OS, and Scout has a whole education system to learn how to use it, and they'll sit down for an hour with you with the CEO, and you can walk through a use case. And so if you're interested in that, I'm happy to introduce you to them. And it's also the reason I'm a big fan is that Stephen Hill, who did the work I just described, did a bunch of analysis across a bunch of different agentic frameworks and was finding that because of the way Scout, their business model operates, it's actually way cheaper to use them than a lot of other solutions in terms of being a proxy for a lot of other services that you might have individual licenses for. So I'm not trying to advocate specifically, on behalf of the company. I have no stake in their use, but but people who have been getting rolling with Scout, included non-government people that Stephen has introduced it to, are all like just glowing about how much of an impact it's had and how cost effective it's been.
Well, and you would think that there's a correct architecture for running most of our services in cities and states, right? A correct architecture. Oh, somebody figured out the best way to do it. We've been studying that across 28 industries for 50 years. Like, that's my job. And when I look at the way that we could build and deploy some of these models, there's ways that are a lot more effective and efficient, especially considering all of the tools that we do have in the toolbox. What an interesting time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I also saw one of your comments was also about smart cities, and I think Lon is somebody that is also another great resource to talk about that. I think she's done a lot of work with smart cities. So, as Rick connects you to her, you could dialogue with her about that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. This is just for new people and people who aren't engaged in the committees yet. We would like to see if, get help from people as we can. As everybody knows, or maybe you don't know, the GovAI Coalition is made up mostly of volunteers that move all this work forward and think about how to, all the people on our working groups within this committee and all the other committees here at the coalition are volunteer based. People are coming on board and thinking about great ideas and putting them into action. So this is just an overview of how you can get involved, and your involvement doesn't have to be, you don't have to lead the working group, you don't have to drive all the content, but just helping out, like with drafting basic information, PowerPoints, helping just think about brainstorming, connecting the working group with external organizations that can add value. Those are all like really helpful things that can move the work that we are all working on together forward. So really encourage you, if you're in these meetings and you're listening to the work that like Jim presented on or Rick presented on, or any of our other working groups as they come forward with projects, feel free to raise your hand and participate to the extent that you have capacity. We take every level of availability and capacity, and sometimes that, like, even if you just have time, like I said, to brainstorm or review something and give some notes, that stuff is really helpful to making everything that we're developing at the coalition meaningful and relevant to our audience, which is local government agencies. So really encourage you jumping in anywhere you have an interest or some time. So you can always reach out to me, Sahar, or Albert, if you're interested in anything or have an idea. Todd, I see you'd like to get involved in sustainable design of data centers as an engineering firm. I don't know, Albert, is there anything happening at the coalition around data centers, or the thoughts around data centers?
Yeah, so there's been a healthy chunk of conversations around data centers, especially in the last couple of months. One of the things that you're going to be seeing, probably, I think we're going to get a little more uh, public about it. Well, not public, but more, broad encompassing with the coalition, is some of the work that we're doing in partnership with Stanford and a nonprofit called Allies, around how you properly engage the public around deciding when a data center makes sense. So those conversations are happening just a handful of pilot cities right now, and we're hoping to bring it to the broader coalition sometime in the fall. And that's, I think, when there's going to be a good amount of healthy discussion there.
Great. All right. Well, maybe that's an area where Todd can have some input and perspective. So
Absolutely.
looking forward to hearing more about that. So we are at the end of the agenda today. I don't know if any of the working groups that are here, Rick, you're the only one left. If you want to use any of our remaining space and time to talk about anything with any members that are here on the call, or if anybody wants to talk about anything else in particular that wasn't on our agenda, there's a few minutes here left at the end of the session. I'm hearing that might be a no. So I'm gonna cap us off and say thank you to everybody who came today. Great to see all the updates on AI with Fire and with Rick and the training group. So, and also our one-on-one support group. So very excited to see all those things moving forward and having some momentum, and looking forward to hearing more about them at our next project meeting, which will be in the first week of August. So again, just a reminder, next meeting is on the July 15th, is the guest speaker. Hannah Lipstein is coming to talk about AI, greening AI and procurement. So looking forward to having that talk, and thank you everybody for coming in today and participating and being here as we walk through these issues. And thank you, Albert, for chiming in on so many helpful things. So
Thank you, Rich, for running the show. Take care, y'all.
All right. Bye, everybody.